Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. It is another day. It's May 17th, 2022. I don't know about you guys, but I've truly enjoyed the beautiful weather outside. Last time we met, it was raining. This time we're meeting. There is some beautiful weather outside, but we're here today for a very important conversation. We're here today because despite how good the weather is outside, we understand that there are a few things, crisis things of importance in our communities that have to be discussed with ideas. And that's why I'm excited to have the conversation today with the Honorable Dr. Anthony Andrews Jr. So good evening, Doctor.
Good evening, and I'm really happy to be again, excited for the opportunity to talk to people about some of the concerns that we heard about as we move around the district and knock on doors and talk to constituents. I'm sure we'll have some people who have had some of those conversations at the doors with me, who will probably be on tonight or future town halls. We'll talk about some of those conversations, and hopefully together we can come up with some ideas that we think will change the quality of life for the better for all the residents in Southeast Queens, starting with the 32nd Assembly District.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. There is so much value to that. The conversation is well overdue. So, but I would like to thank everyone for joining. Thank you for being on time. Thank you for sitting in on this conversation. And we would be remiss if we didn't give the opportunity at some point in this conversation to really hear from all of you that decided to join us today and hear from the good doctor, as I like to call him. Now that, I've said thank you, we've talked about the great weather outside, and I'd like to say that, once again, with relation to getting to hear from you, the audience, there will be space and opportunity for everyone to go into the chat later on to then share a question, things that come up, and will be responded to at the end of the call. But like every other conversation that we've had thus far, they've all been very vigorous and to the point and very policy-based. But for the callers that are calling in on your cell phone, unfortunately, we won't be able to get questions from you this time around. We encourage you to join us via the Zoom link for the ability to do that in the chat. So just want to put those housekeeping information out there so that we know it and we can jump into the conversation today. So this is our third time, good doctor. We've been here, and I tell you, the first two times I've heard something different about your background each time. So I'm not trying to put the pressure on here, but please tell me a little bit more. Give us some scoop into your backstory, what it means to the person that you've developed into, the leader that you've developed into today.
Thank you, JSS. Really want to start by talking about the fact that I'm homegrown, right? I grew up in this neighborhood, was born in Jamaica Hospital, grew up on off Suffolk Boulevard, 19th Avenue, lived in this community basically all my life. And again, have worked in this community basically the majority of my professional life. Worked at York College, 29 years at York College as an administrator and a professor, chaired the board of Queens Hospital Center, served on other nonprofit boards like Jamaica Center for Arts and Learning, all engaged with nonprofit organizations, whether working or whether working without pay as a volunteer, hoping to build a better community. And it's with that I began involved with politics at 16 years old. And Fred Wilson and Tom White were my mentors, and Wanda Watkins. And I worked with a number of elected officials over the years, but these were people who really changed my life, my formative years. I wasn't, in Jamaica, we have done podcasts, you and I together on your podcast. So that, I came from, the streets. I came from South Jamaica, as you call it, the South Side. So it wasn't all peaches and cream, involved with things that, I was not too proud of as a kid. And I want to say that, the greatest thing about, this life that I've learned is that, over the years, I've grown, become very involved in the community, and as a Democratic state committee person and a Democratic district leader, I worked very, very hard to improve the quality of life of residents of the community as a volunteer party official. Over 10 years as district leader, 14 years as Democratic state committee person. Um, and, been very involved in my church over the years. And now I'm the area deputy for the Knights of Peter Claiborne and Ladies Auxiliary, which is the largest predominantly Black fraternal order in the Catholic Church. So I've been in this community doing the work for a number of years, and I'm really glad, to be able to run for office and to be able to bring some of these issues to the forefront, things that I've talked about with people for years, and I'm now hearing at a greater level as I knock on doors throughout the district, um, so that I can really try to get to talk about these things and come up with ideas with our team as to how we can address these things.
And address them, you will. Address them, you will. I have to acknowledge the fact that there was some issues with hearing you from your microphone. I know there's something that we can do to try to address that. There's a little bit of echo on my feedback on my side. So, we'll try to work that out. Thank you guys for being patient in the technology world that we're living in today. I heard a lot of, backstory mingled in with the leadership story, mixed in with experiences that help to make you who you are today. And each time, like I said already, just hearing the story really shows the character and the person that you are. So thank you for sharing, as always. If you don't mind, I'd love to be cognizant of our time and keep us on a very tight schedule, because there are a lot of things that we have to talk about this afternoon. And these subjects, I believe we can't just rush through, those some, and I know, the detailed answers that you provide each time. So let's get into it. The word foreclosure, all right? It's a word that kind of scares me. I know, it scares me living in Queens. It scares almost everyone, because that's a place that many of us don't ever want to see. But the reality is that many of us do see it. Many of us in our community see it. So Southeast Queens is still the foreclosure capital of New York City. There's no denying those numbers, the facts, what's happening around us. Why is foreclosure such a problem here? And so why is it such a problem here? And then simultaneously, what do you plan to do to combat that?
So, there's a number of reasons. As you said, Jermaine, we were the epicenter of foreclosure housing crisis several years ago. And that was because of a number of different things, including some unscrupulous attorneys and organizations that took advantage of homeowners. One story I remember speaking to, I'm sure he won't mind me talking about this and talking about him. This is a great attorney, Chris Renfro, was a good friend of mine and a fantastic attorney. I remember going over during the foreclosure crisis several years ago, and as we were becoming the epicenter of the nation's foreclosure crisis, right here in South Jamaica. And I remember going over to Chris's office, and Chris said, I have an issue that I need your help with, Tony. He said, I may want to get the press involved. I've been fighting this case for this woman for about a year now. He said, and I got to be honest with you, it's been really difficult for me. He said, a woman came home one day after taking a vacation. She went out of the country. She came back, I don't know, maybe a month later, and she couldn't get into her house. And she realized that her locks had been changed. So she wondered, who could have possibly changed her locks? Somebody came to the door and said, I'm sorry, can I help you? She said, who are you? He said, I own the house. We had several of these types of scams that took place during that time. And of course, this was just one of many, right? I gotta be honest with you. We've heard several stories. We also heard about the fact that property taxes were sky high. We heard about the fact that, of course, when you were finally out, I found this out myself when my grandfather passed away. Found out that our home, which we thought was, of course, worth a lot more, when the market took a dive, we found out that a $300,000, $400,000 home all of a sudden was down to $100,000 in what was a down market. And then people wanted to find out, well, what do we do? I mean, how do you now get rid of the house when you can't, you can never get the value that it was before? Some people just couldn't afford their homes anymore. Again, when when they were neighbors of mine in the neighborhood, when I picked up and I came back to 119th Avenue to take over my grandfather and grandmother's house, there were people who just couldn't afford their homes anymore. It was a really bad time. People out of work, they couldn't afford their homes, and they couldn't afford the property taxes, which is another issue we'll get into. And so they sold their houses. So now the market is taking a downturn, and people are selling their houses that were once, maybe a year ago, maybe a year and a half before that, worth $500,000. People are selling their houses for $100,000. So now, how do you get the most out of the house that you hold on to? Because now your house is now not going to be worth $500,000. The market is dropping. So now your house is approximately, they're offering $100,000 for your house. There was so many people that could not afford their houses at that time. So many scams that were going on that all of a sudden now you have all these houses that are being foreclosed upon. And now you have people that are moving into foreclosure and not with no help at all. When the houses then began to be foreclosed upon, the banks weren't able to sell them because a lot of homes, after they fix their homes up, when they tore a house down to family. So now what happens? You have a lot of foreclosed homes on the same block, but you have homes where people are living. So now what does that do to the property value? That reduced the property value even further. It was a real serious crisis in Southeast Queens. So what do we need to do to try to stop this from happening again? Well, I think we have to mandate banks at least attempt to arrange independent financial counseling before foreclosure filings are processed. So before the foreclosure is even processed, before the filings are done, we've got to mandate banks really at least attempt at independent financial counseling. The only way you can stop this is early intervention. Because once again, at the end of this, it's too late. By the time people find out their homes are being foreclosed on, it's really too late. Most of the times, there's nothing they can do about it. So that's one of the things we've got to do. We've also got to mandate banks enroll customers in free and independent financial literacy, right? Prior to their first mortgage. So that way, if they realize that this is the responsibility I'm undertaking, this is what it really means to own a home, then maybe if I decide that I can't afford it because I've received the proper financial literacy training, maybe I decide to opt out. I decide not to purchase a house. Maybe I decide to do something else to make sure I'm more financially secure. There are things we can do, right? But we've got to begin to mandate that banks take extra care to provide this information to potential homeowners. One of the reasons why people were being foreclosed upon is that they were getting into these situations where they were supposedly purchasing a home, thinking that the bank or the realtor was selling them a home and making sure that they got the proper financing. And they really did not know what that meant. They realized at some point they could not afford the homes after they purchased the homes, which then caused the foreclosure. This happened all throughout Southeast Queens. Banks were taking advantage of people in Southeast Queens. And it was happening in our community at a higher percentage than any place in the nation, which was incredible. Banks have to be more, not cognizant, but banks have to be more accountable for making sure that the people that they're reaching out to and making sure the people that they're talking to about financing their home are actually able to make sure that that home is not only properly financed, but to be able to.
Yeah, the fact of the matter is that, a lot of times.
Where's your glasses?
You see, yeah, my glasses are right here. Here you go. A lot of times what I believe is happening is that, I'm sorry, it's almost bedtime. And so, yeah, so what happens is, Merit, thank you, baby. The fact of the matter is, here's what happens in politics and government and in people that are making a lot of change. I find a lot of times a lot of things are reactive and not proactive. And I think the best thing about, what you're saying here is that let's get in advance of that foreclosure, like that conversation. Let's get them before they even buy the house. That's really being proactive versus reactive as someone that's representing the needs of other people. Can you talk about that a little bit more, like, that the way you see that happening in a market where there's going to have to be those type of things that are happening?
Right. Again, Jermaine, it's all about being responsible. Right? We had a lot of bankers, a lot of realtors who were, in league with some of the realtor bankers who were just interested in making money. It was a great market, they said, to buy a house. And they were saying, hey, we can make sure that you get the proper financing. We'll do everything for you. We've got one-stop shop. This real estate company has a one-stop shop. We have everything. We have the realtor, we have the bank, we have everybody right here. We even give you an attorney. And a lot of these guys are doing unscrupulous things. This is what happened. This is why we were in this situation. Now, yes, there were some people who got fined. There were some companies that, of course, were brought to court by the Attorney General's office. But it still hurt so many people. There were so many people who lost their homes, and this was their dream. Their dream, right?
Yeah.
Building a family is what you have. You have a family, you have a home, and they were connived. We've got to make sure that banks are more responsible. And that's the bottom line.
Awesome. Traditional homeowners, especially outside of our high-rise developments in downtown Jamaica, most of our community, actually the complete opposite of New York City, right, where we know the percentages of renters versus homeowners. In our communities, most of us are single-family or two-family developments. And how, let me not answer the question for you. Instead, let me ask, how do we protect, right, the quality of our communities and support existing homeowners so they can stay in New York City with levels of affordability that we can manage?
Jermaine, I have to tell you, moving around the district, knocking on doors, and we knocked on 7,600 doors now. By far, the greatest common issue that we have heard from the homeowners is property tax. They want property tax reform, right? We've got to reform the property tax system to more equitably reflect real market value and more equitably collect property tax revenue. Everybody we've talked to as a homeowner, without fail, maybe one or two people say, well, it is what it is. But without fail, 95% of the people we've spoken to or homeowners have said, my property tax is going up every month. I can't afford this property tax. And we keep talking to them about the fact that we want to reform the property tax system. It is key for us in this community. We now are paying more in property taxes in Southeast Queens than people in Belrose, or even people in Park Slope who are millionaires. It's absurd that we're paying more property taxes than them. I spoke to the governor about this a few months ago. On a Zoom with the governor, sponsored by Senator Leroy Conlon. And I said to the governor, the biggest issue in our community in Southeast Queens, in my district, by far, is property taxes. That's what the homeowners want to address. What are you going to do to address the property tax issue? I said, I get the area median income. I get the fact that, I said, but we've got to do something to address the area median income if that's the case, because property taxes are sky high and we're paying more than millionaires on slopes. She said, yes, I'm aware that the property tax in certain parts of the state is something that needs to be addressed. And I'm going to address it. So I was looking, to see if she had a plan to address it. And the governor said, I'm going to put in a fix this year. I said, okay, great. And she said, so I'm going to make sure we address it this year. And I remember talking to Amir, and he said, well, What does that mean? Does that mean like what the next year? That means the governor plans to fix it for this year. But who do we have fighting for these constituents next year and afterwards? Because the governor didn't say it was going to be a permanent fix. She said, I'm going to do a one-time fix. And she did. To her credit, she did. But we're going to need somebody to fight for these residents in our community over the next several years. We haven't had anybody fighting for us before, and we're going to need somebody to fight for us in the future to make sure that the property tax issue is addressed. It's all about fairness, right? I mean, we should not be paying more than people who make 10 times the income of most of our property owners here in Jamaica. Um, we should be paying less than people in Park Slope and even Belrose, which is right across the way. The income is different. Why aren't we paying our fair share? Why are we paying more than our fair share? It almost seems as if it's designed that way. I don't want to think that, right? But when you see that we're paying more than areas where people who don't necessarily look like us are paying a lot less, you begin to think about social justice. And you wonder if it's just a matter of dealing with this as a social justice issue. What's right is right, and what's wrong is wrong.
Yeah, you're hitting some really key points there. Equity, bringing about some type of balance in this equation because it is off kilter 100%. 100%. With that being said, the next subject that I want to really dive into is homelessness. Like we can say it all day long because it's that much of an issue that is it's becoming even more prevalent with what's happening downtown. Sky rises going up. We're starting to see a presence that's developing in a real groundswell kind of way. My question: what are we seeing happening in downtown Jamaica? What can we do to address homelessness in general? I mean, in general is very broad, but I really like this subject alone can be a conversation in of itself. So please walk me through.
Well, we've got some ideas. I mean, we've talked about this as a team. We've come up with a number of different things that we can done. We talked a little bit before about property taxes. We talked about the area median income, how that needs to be addressed. Of course, that does need to be redefined. We shouldn't be taking in the areas outside of New York City, and Jamaica should be an area of its own. I mean, you look at Southeast Queens, and in Southeast Queens, we have, one of the highest Black family incomes in the entire United States, median incomes, right? And at the same time, in the midst of Southeast Queens, we have we have one of the lowest poverty indexes in South Jamaica in the entire nation. So the area median income needs to reflect the population that we have here in this community, and not taking the areas outside of our community where we have higher incomes, and then the median income becomes higher. So that is really something that is problematic, right? So we talked a little bit about that first. I mentioned that in the last question. But let me specifically deal with homelessness because what people don't realize is that we have a large homeless population that is growing in Jamaica. And it's not just growing because of the homeless shelters, but that's part of the problem. But it's also growing because people can't afford to live here anymore, right? We have a large growing senior citizen homeless issue. There are a lot of homeless seniors. They can no longer afford their homes. Property taxes are too high. Affordable housing is not affordable housing because the area median income makes it truly unaffordable. So we need really affordable housing to be purchased. To be sold here in this community. And I think we can do that, right? So we got to be able to allow developers higher zoning limits, but only if the properties are going to be sold as affordable housing. Really truly affordable housing. Again, talk about the area median income, which needs to be defined so that we can have truly affordable housing. We have homeless shelters, proliferation of homeless shelters, which we should not have. We've heard stories about people purchasing or going to the community planning board, purchasing property and say, I'm going to build a hotel on the property. And then before they can build the hotel, all of a sudden the community planning board says, great, you can move forward. And then they go to Department of Homeless Services and they get a license and certificate to build it. Not just a hotel, but to make it a homeless hotel because that's guaranteed money for the city. You got to make sure that people don't do that. You can't do that anymore. You got to fight against developers who are trying to do that. Not to do. Got to find a way to stop that. We've also got to get away from homeless shelters. I think we can create traditional housing voucher programs so that people can get housing vouchers and be placed in permanent homes as opposed to shelters. We've got to get away from the shelters. We've got to get people permanent housing. New York City Housing Authority. The New York City Housing Authority is another issue that has to be addressed. I've gone through, several housing authority properties over the last several months. We have a bunch of NYCHA housing developments. And one of the things I keep hearing from people is the fact that the repairs aren't done. Timely is one thing. Sometimes the repairs are not done at all. We hear these horror stories about people having no heat or hot water. We've got to make sure the NYCHA is fully funded. We've got to make sure we do this to support the needs of the residents of NYCHA. And I've got to say, once we do that, we're going to be able to address a lot of the housing problems at NYCHA that people are having, the residents are talking about. It's just a matter of making sure the NYCHA is fully funded. We can expand housing support for LGBTQ. Most people don't know this, but Black trans kids are the most likely demographic to face homelessness. And oftentimes they don't have people around that are supportive. Building more senior housing, building more affordable housing, and making sure the state invests more in senior affordable housing is important. I've gone to housing developments during this campaign where people are paying $1,800 for a 2-bedroom apartment. $1,800 is difficult for me to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. I don't know how you would afford $1,800 for a 2-bedroom apartment in a senior development on a fixed income. I'm not sure how they're able to afford it, but I know we got to do something about it. Our seniors are our most important resource, not just for wisdom and experience, but because a lot of times our seniors have developed the relationships that we need to be able to move things forward.
Well, so yeah, once again, a lot to chew there. The NYCHA stuff is absolutely accurate. It's something that we're seeing, especially and working with foster care youth myself. I know for a fact that that population of trans young people, they are the ones that are constantly on the streets, not getting any kind of help, and then increase essentially our homelessness. But the senior subject, the senior kind of issue, and the problems that the people that have helped us even have the society that we have today, giving us the foundations, a lot of times they're not even being taken care of or being thought of as a priority. And this is essentially right before, I opened it up to get some questions from the rest of the participants here. But I would love to know, we are in a community that is aging in place with naturally occurring retirement communities scattered throughout Southeast Queens. Know many of them, interact with many of them, very important. How will you better support our seniors in the community? I know you started to touch on it a little bit, but I really want to give a little bit of a tee up for the ideas that you have around making sure that we can better support our seniors in the community facing challenges, inflation, and reduced services, et cetera. So dive into that very, very critical subject so that we can hear more, Dr. Andrews.
So as I think about my Aunt Ruby, God bless her soul, Ruby Davis, who many consider the mother of Rochdale Village. She was really somebody who many people have come to and took care of a lot of people over the years that she lived in Rochdale Village. And I think about one of the biggest problems she had. And she would go to Newark. She would go to the Rochdale Senior Center. And a lot of times she would say, I need to speak to this particular social worker. I'd say, well, why don't you can just speak to anybody here. And she said, no, not everybody understands it and can help me. And I found it really strange. So I found out that not all of the social workers and not all of the counselors there had all of the information that they needed to help each senior. Some just did not have the training. So we got to make sure the city conducts quarterly social services training for senior citizens there. Everybody should be able to address seniors' problems. Seniors shouldn't have to say, I got to call Wednesday because so-and-so's there Wednesday, because she has appointment time on Wednesday. Everybody should be able to address those seniors when they come through the door. No, we talked about something else because another problem that my grandmother used to have, purchasing prescriptions. You know, a lot of our seniors, they didn't have a organization or a company or an agency or city agency or state agency that gave them a great retirement plan so that, you know, they were able to purchase the same prescriptions that you and I can purchase right now at a reduced cost. So my idea is to make it easier for our seniors to be able to purchase their prescriptions by creating a state benefit corporation so that they can purchase prescriptions wholesale, or a company that can, you know, create generic prescription drugs so that they can pay a lot less than those with names, those name brands that they may be, you know, that will assist them with funds. A lot of seniors just can't purchase the prescription drugs they need because they're just too costly. Something else that I think we can do, and I've heard so many, I talked to Billy Mitchell, our president of our Democratic Club, and I think if I've heard one story from Billy, I've heard 1,000 about accessoride. I think we can do something different and something better. Let's replace accessoride with the new DIFTA subsidized ride sharing app and expand the senior citizens call operation center. Because Billy, when he talks to me, he says, I'm calling about this, and I'm calling I'm calling the center to complain about accessoride. And, you know, maybe I get somebody, and, you know, even if I do get somebody, it seems like I'm calling all the time to address the same situations. I'm sure you may get on and say something about that. So we've got to expand the senior citizen operating call center to help direct services to the proper place so that people don't have to call again and again about the same problem. We have a problem with nursing. I go back to, you know, my Aunt Ruby and us making sure that we have the proper healthcare professional. It's difficult. If you're working and your family members are working every day, who do you have to take care of your elderly aunt or your grandmother or your mother who is aging in place, right? Wants to stay home. You want to make sure that they don't have to go to a nursing home or someplace else or retirement center unless that's something they want. But we have a nursing shortage. A lot of our nurses are burnt out, and especially after this last pandemic. You know what people don't realize, and I've talked to this issue 1,000 times with healthcare professionals and in the public at New York State Nurses Association rallies. We talk about safe staffing. We talk about having the proper amount of nurses on duty to make sure that the patients are being cared for. What we don't really talk about is that we need nurses in the homes also. If we have a naturally occurring retirement community, and our seniors are aging in place, as we call it, they're at home, then we need nurses to come and help them out also. But if we have nurses that are leaving the profession because they're just burnt out, because some of our nurses are working double shifts and triple shifts. Imagine working 16 hours, 18 hours with a 15-minute break, with barely a bathroom break. Some of them, a lot of them, don't get a chance to even eat lunch because they have 10 patients on their rounds. If they have 10 patients they got to take care of, when do they have time to eat lunch or take a break? So this is what's happening in our hospitals and our nursing homes. And now we've got to get people out to the homes so they can be, you know, they can be in a position to help our seniors as they age in place. So we've got to do something about that. How do we address the nursing shortage, right? Well, maybe we can create some tax breaks so that we can encourage our nurses to continue the profession. Maybe I'll stay if I'm a nurse because it doesn't seem like, you know, I'm able to get the proper staffing ratio. So I'm only taking care of 4 people on my round. I'm taking care of 10 people. And maybe I'm not able to get the breaks that I need because we have a nursing shortage. But maybe if there's a tax break that I get from the state, maybe I won't retire because that's something for me to stay around for. And then we can also maybe use that to recruit new nurses into the field because they say, you know what? Hey, if I'm a nurse, not only do I get proper respect from the people who understand that I'm a frontline employee. But I'm also getting the state giving me a tax break just for being a registered nurse. I think there are things that we can do to assist people, of course, who are aging in place and who are retirees, and those people such as myself who will be very soon a senior citizen. Heck, I've got my ARP card already, Jermaine, and I use it. I use it to go to the movies. I use it to go to restaurants. Trust me, I use my ARP card. So there's some other things, right? Like, so what if we thought about doing something like this? Let's get kind of creative. What if all employees, all workers with over all companies who had employees 100 or more, let's say, automatically enrolled in an unmatched 401k plan, investing 5% of their income, right? The state would manage this IRA. That would be similar to the New York Safe plan, the 529 plan, and also exempt employer-sponsored participants. What about enrolling all workers in employee-sponsored retirement programs with matching funds? I mean, we at CUNY have a matching fund system. It's incredible. I mean, so whatever I put in, it's matched. I mean, this will increase the savings of all workers and give them better retirement at the end of it. And what if we can cap employer vesting periods to 1 year for all employer-sponsored matching programs? This will allow workers more mobility to leave workplaces without hurting the retirement savings. People get vested in 1 year, right? Now, if you decide to leave, you don't have to wait 7 years or 8 years to be vested because you're vested already. Just a few of the things I think we can do. We have a bunch of ideas on our website, of course. But the automatic savings is something that we can do. It was just passed in New York City a few years ago to increase retirement savings. I think the people across the state can use something like this. We're not the only retirement community in Southeast Queens. There are a lot of communities across the state that probably benefit from something like this. I'd like to see if we can do that. The great thing about being a state elected official, Jermaine, is that you're not only impacting residents in New York City, but you're sitting on committees where you can impact people throughout the state. And I think that's critical.
Hear that. I don't know, the audience is there. You please, I know there's probably things that really stood out to you, but I'll tell you this much. The idea of expanding incentives to nursing, those are the people that are taken care of, our elderly. My grandmother gets taken care of by a nurse, nurse's aide, and I don't know what we would do without her. And so I know that hits home for me. Additionally, the social services training, that has to happen, right? So I think these are, once again, these ideas, they're really proactive and not reactive. And to be honest with you, I don't see much reactive kind of policies in play for our community, usually from, the state where these type of things happen. But in this instance, it's being proactive so that we can, address some of these things. So, I think it's very important. These are all things that matter to us as a community. That being said, I think, we really hit some of the real subjects that we had to talk on: the housing, some of your great ideas around that, and for our seniors, some of your proactive approaches to working with and better supporting our seniors. I want to give an opportunity right now for our audience, for those that are listening in, that are tuning in, that have the ability to, feel free to ask questions, come on the mic, unmute yourself. Moderator, please give the ability for them to unmute themselves, or additionally put it in the chat if you also feel more comfortable and I can read the questions for you. I know we have one lined up so far, and then there is a question from Michelle K. So I will start with the question that I received via direct message on the side and access. Dr. Andrews, please just, as always, these questions are coming to you, right, where you can, essentially just go back into your policy, what you feel about certain things. But with this question, the governor has consistently been saying that she wants to increase density in single family communities. And this may sound like it's a me question, but it's not a me question. She's trying to increase density in single family communities. Fact of the matter is, and some people are talking about ending single family zoning. Do you support ending single family zoning?
So listen, Jermaine, I think, the governor has a right to ask for this. I understand what the governor's reasoning is. We need housing, right? So we need places for people to live. I get it. We have a lot of people homeless. But we also need to respect our communities, right? So some of our communities, Jermaine, can't take further density. I mean, we have a real issue with this right now, right? So it may seem like a great idea for homes, right? But it doesn't sound like a great idea for the homeowners in my community. People are talking about this. We need to allow people to make the best decisions for themselves. It's great that the governor has an idea that she wants to do this, right? But I think we've got to let the people who are residents in these communities make the decisions for themselves. Let it go through the community planning board. If the community planning board has a large population of people who say, we think we can do this in our community, it's great. But you're making decisions for people from on high without consulting the people down here who are really going to have to deal with this, right? So again, I think it's important for her to allow us to make those decisions down here.
Thanks for diving into that one. Yeah, there's so much to be said around that, and just the culture of our community, what it means, our way of life, etc. So, I understand that we are in a bit of a pickle, but I'm glad that we have your position. I want to give the floor to first Michelle K, then Frederica. I'm not seeing any other hands right now. Let me just do another quick scroll. There are no other hands at the moment. So I'd like to first start with Michelle, and then we're gonna go to Frederica. So Michelle, the floor is yours. Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Michelle.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I got a text message.
Good to see you.
I wasn't loud enough, so am I loud enough?
Yeah. In regard to the density, I'm not sure, are you familiar with, it may be tied in with Agenda 21 that the UN has, this goes back, it's 1992 with sustainability and building housing upward. There's been talk, it's going around the country, not just, in New York. It's something that really needs to be looked at so that you can be ahead of the game, because they do want to take away single family homes and build up and really redefine how communities look.
That's not acceptable. I will oppose ending single family zoning. I mean, it will destroy the entire culture of our communities, essentially. I mean,
I understand.
We have a single family homeowner community. Further downtown Jamaica, we have a lot of developments going on, but it would really destroy what we have built and what our, people who came here years ago to Southeast Queens came because this is the type of community that they live in. If the suburbs can look like this, then why couldn't they live here without going to the suburbs, without going to Westchester or Yonkers or Long Island? This is exactly why we have this community that we have. People live here and bought homes here because of that. So
well, I'm sorry, I have a short presentation that I would like for you to hear. If you cannot, then Amir, it's on sustainability, and I think you will find this very interesting. And as far as the essential workers, it's nice what you would like to do for the caretakers, but then you kind of be a slippery slope when you're talking about other essential workers where you have law enforcement that are retiring through attrition, through different reasons that, some of them would stay on the job too if they had some special, extensions provided to them. Same thing on the fire department, even though fire department, you can do that for so long because of the nature of the job. But I'll stay on and listen to some more of your ideas and, continue to make the phone calls.
Thank you, Michelle. Listen, it's important. We learned in this last town hall how important it was to have people like yourself who are part of our team, who are supporters, who are residents of this community and community leaders that can assist us with developing ideas and coming up with new and creative solutions to some of the problems, some of the challenges that we have. So, you know, this is a team effort. I'm going to need the entire community once we are in office to be able to challenge the status quo and to be able to do some things differently. So I appreciate what you said. I had some of the, you know, when I interviewed and screened with the New York State Guardians Association, which, as you know, and many other people may know, are the Black fraternal law enforcement organizations in New York State. And they endorsed me, by the way. So I am endorsed by the New York State Guardians Association. They brought up some things. They looked at my website and said, here's some concerns that we have about some of the things you're saying. So can we delve into that a little bit, talk about this a little bit? So it's great. We've got to have a give and take in terms of these talks, discussions, and you know, I'm going to be educated by people like you who have certain skills that you've developed over the years as a professional in certain areas, not just in the community active, but also in your professional life, to be able to help me come up with creative ideas to be able to get things done. So I appreciate what you said. That's something we can talk about some more, and certainly send that over to Amir so Amir can take a look at it. He is my policy expert, and let's discuss it some more as we move forward.
Awesome. Thank you for such a great question, Michelle. And I would like to give the floor right now to Frederica. Please unmute yourself, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My question has to do with the area medium income. And I know that you want to redefine it, and I would like you to state how you would redefine it. And the other question related to that is, how is that data used to determine other services other than housing in the area?
Great question. So first of all, I think we've got to be able to look at the area median income and not include the areas outside of New York where they have residents and families who have much higher incomes. We've got to be able to reduce that area so that we make it more fair. So you can't take a look at the area median income and include South Jamaica and include that with parts of Westchester, Yonkers, New Rochelle, and then in Long Island. You just can't do it, because when you do that, right, it's including the entire New York City metro area, right? And by doing that, it raises the area median income. We need to, so how do you have truly affordable housing for people who can't afford that? They can't afford what somebody in Long Island or Westchester can afford. The people, some of the people, residents and families in Jamaica, because we have low income families, truly low income families. So we've got to make sure that we reduce the area so that it doesn't include the entire New York City metro area, right? So that it includes a smaller area, which can really define a true area median income. And that's something that's got to be done in negotiations. But again, you got to have somebody fighting for that, right? The other thing, what was the second question you asked, Rebecca?
The second question was, how is that data also used to determine the cost of other services other than housing?
So that's a good question. In regard to that, as we've begun to talk about this, obviously, if you have city services, let's take a look at, let's say, homeless services, right? Or let's take a look at senior citizen services, right? If you have an area median income that is much higher than maybe it should be, you're not going to get the social services that you would normally get in an area which is low income. So federal subsidies, of course, across the state allocate this using the criteria. But I believe that if you have an income, an area median income, which is much higher because you're taking in things out, you're taking in communities outside of our immediate area, then I believe that it's going to impact the social services you would normally get, because the city is going to look at this and say, well, the income for residents here is much higher. So you obviously don't need as much in terms of social services and money. But again, that's my belief. But I'll look into that some more so I can have a much clearer answer for you. But I believe that's what it would impact. But I'm going to look into it some more just to be sure.
Thank you.
Thank you for such a good question. These are good questions so far. I know we have another hand, and I want to make sure we give Deborah an opportunity to unmute herself and ask the question. Thank you, Deborah.
Deborah, you're on.
Don't necessarily have a question, but I wanted to speak to the issue of the higher median income in our area of Southeast Queens, there is another factor that affects it, not just the size of the area that is being used to calculate. In Southeast Queens, we have a lot of multi-generational households. And we have a large immigrant population where multiple families, unrelated families, are dwelling in one house. So when the census is done, all those incomes count towards that one address, even though they're really essentially separate households. And I just wanted to add that to the discussion because that is also something that should be addressed because it does affect grants that our area is excluded from because we have a higher median income per household. And it's something that excludes us from a lot of resources.
Dr. Andrews, yeah. All right. I mean, that is a very valid point and something that has to be considered when you're looking at the median income and how it's influencing where the numbers lie and what it means for our community and the resources that we get. Do you want to speak to that a little bit, Dr. Andrews, in terms of, is there a process that you believe on the state level that we can do that, you know, addresses some of the things that make our communities unique, more so than maybe other, you know, districts, other areas in the other parts of our state?
You know, I gotta tell you, Jermaine, you know, I go across the borough and a lot of our communities are dealing with the same issue now. It's not just Southeast Queens, where we have a lot of immigrants that have now come into our communities. It may seem like it's us because the community is not just Southeast Queens. In addition to that, you know, AIM is calculated by the number of adults in the household, but we had a real problem with the census this last time. We had one of the lowest ratios, lowest percentages of completed census returns in the entire city of New York. So a lot of these families weren't even, you know, filling out the census forms. We tried to do our best to get the word out, but you would think that, of course, you know, we would be filling out the census forms and making sure that we got our fair share. But we had a lot of families that weren't doing that. So that's another problem. If we did have families filling this out, then that would be a bigger problem. And just like Ms. Fairley said, that would be a real issue for us. That could be an issue for us. But in our community, in this congressional district, we have one of the lowest percentages of rate of returns for our citizens in the entire city. In fact, in the entire state.
Yeah. I have to take this opportunity to acknowledge Councilmember Natasha Williams, who is in this chat. I'm not too sure if she wants to acknowledge, but you know, Councilmember District from 27. Hello, so she's in the chat. Hi.
I didn't see that. Hi, Nan. How are you? Thank you so much for coming in, joining us. I know Nan did a lot of these when she was running, and I think she was able to get a lot of information. I sat down and talked with her on occasion or had breakfast, and we talked about a lot of these policies that she has come up with and things that she was thinking about doing. She found out a lot, you know, doing door to door, talking to the residents. So, you know, we've enacted the same strategy. The way to find out what the people really need is not to think about what you think they need, but to go out to the doors, knock on the doors and talk to the residents and ask them what they really need and what their thoughts are about some of the things that you want to do. That's the only way to really find out. Otherwise, you're just guessing. You're making an assumption. That's bad policy and bad politics, and certainly bad leadership. Oh, and congratulations on the first piece of legislation. She has not been in for more than a few months, and I have 3 council members, so I can say my council member, Natasha Williams, has passed her very first piece of legislation. I was really surprised that with only a few months, she's already not only had and sponsored legislation, but had her first piece of legislation passed. So congratulations on that, man.
Sure.
Thank you. I didn't want to like take over your meeting. I really just exactly what you said. I just want to listen to, because I think you're right. It's always good to listen to the issues that people are bringing up. So I'm just here like everybody else, just to listen. I always want to be connected to what folks are saying. So just also here to listen. And thank you so much for your kind words about my first bill.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
All righty. Are there any more questions? Do we have any more questions? I know we put the ask out there. We had some really good questions earlier.
Well, we have this opportunity and we have a little time. Let me ask, are there things that you think the people on this call, this Zoom call think, that we haven't addressed, that we haven't put on our website that you think should be addressed? I mean, we've gone out and knocked on 7,600 doors right now, but there may be things that you think that we haven't addressed that we'd like to address that we should be putting on the website, things that we should be discussing. I remember going to South Jamaica houses, and as I went through South Jamaica houses, the tenant association president, Manny, and I got into discussion. There were some things that he didn't think, we should be thinking about, things that he thinks we should be focused on, things that he thinks, well, I don't know if we should be really focused on. I don't know if that's really doable. We had a real discussion. And then we talked about it at home at length for about 2 hours. And after finishing that, I said, Manny, you're right. I'm going to focus on this. And this is going to be the centerpiece of my platform for housing. And so I changed some things on my website and added some things to make sure that we focused on things that I think we can actually accomplish, which are important. So there may be some things that we have left off of our website, things that we're not talking about. And if there are people here on this call who can think of those things in relation to, housing and senior citizens, now's the time to really educate me and help me to become a better leader by telling me about these things so we begin to focus on those things specifically.
Well, the floor is open. If there are some things that that's an exhaustive list you got up there, good sir. You touched on a lot of different subjects with a lot of good ideas, but the floor is open just for the last couple of minutes that we do have here. If there's some things that you believe that should be on the website, things that we're addressing. But in the meantime, while you're thinking about that good stuff, please remember to let to join us on June 28th. June 28th is when the voting actually happens. Vote on June 28th. There are going to be more conversations that we do have coming up. I'm sure we're going to get to the place where our moderator is going to put up the wonderful flyer with the dates, but it's very important that you actually get out there and vote on June 28th. Tell a friend to tell a friend so that we're able to get Dr. Andrews in office. Additionally, more conversations that are going to be happening, youth development, youth and education, these very important conversations that need to happen so that we get a good idea of what his plans are, his many plans. The Youth and Education's Town Hall, which will be taking place on Saturday, May 21st. I will also be hosting this one. I look forward to it as this is a passion of mine. I've spent my professional career working with this. So my questions are going to be really intense for the good doctor. And I hope you're ready. You got your boxing gloves on, Dr. Andrews, because, I'm going to come with it just because, just in the same line with the seniors and what they mean for us, we also have to protect and guide our young people and the education that they receive. So look forward to that on May 21st at 6 p.m. The numbers for that are on the screen, and I'm sure you're going to get them in email. Please share it with your networks, the people that vote, the people that don't vote. Let people know that these conversations are happening, because I don't believe these kind of conversations have happened for this seat in this district in probably
Never.
Before I was born.
Never.
Right. And so this is our opportunity to change that and continue to push the conversation forward about how to make our communities better. All right, with all that said, I don't really, I see a hand. Yes, I do see a hand. And that's Reverend Reynolds. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, good evening, everyone. My concern as a senior is that Medicare doesn't care about our teeth, they don't care about our ears, they don't care about our eyes. when you get to Medicare, yes, they give us health care, but they don't give us the other things that we need. Is there anything you can do to address that issue?
Yeah, and that's something, as we talked about, these retirement plans, mandating the companies create these retirement plans, or we have to make sure that if we get the state to do something like that, then we'll have retirement savings that can assist with these things. Prescription benefits, state benefits program that we intend can help out prescription drugs, so that if you have problems with your teeth or your eyes, that you need prescription drugs to be able to assist with, State Benefits Corporation can assist with something. We really need to make sure that there are some things that we have to do to be able to address healthcare for our seniors in the future. And again, whether we're talking about the State Benefits Corporation or we're talking about making sure that employers are mandated to create a savings plan so that our seniors, when they retire, can afford it, they have some retirement savings. Those are things that we're thinking about doing. Again, we know that there are some issues, obviously, with Medicaid and Medicare. Unfortunately, those are things that we have to continue to look at to try to address as we move forward.
Did I say Medicare?
I'm saying it actually. I'm saying it actually. Medicaid and Medicare both have issues that we need to address. So there are federal and state interventions that we need to have to be able to address both of those programs. Absolutely. Again, there are comprehensive approaches and there are more nuanced answers that we can really deal with today. But I do think, again, there are things that we talked about, not just on our website, but things that we will continue to talk about regarding programs that we can impact. And so, again, it's a nuanced question, a more nuanced question to be able to address that. But I think you're absolutely right. These are things that have to be addressed for our senior citizen population. But again, I think that part of it can be addressed by making sure that employees are assisted by employers. They can make sure they have the proper money in their retirement accounts when they retire to be able to assist them. And a lot of the retirement accounts that, like my union, for instance, have great health benefits plans. But we've got to make sure that employers are doing the right thing so that retirees can be taken care of the same way members are.
Yes, yes. So thank you for that question, Reverend Reynolds. Thank you for all the questions that we received this evening, Dr. Andrews, for answering questions, for just saying, that's something we need to look into and get more information about, because realistically, who has all the answers? The process is really just bringing the stakeholders to the table, which is the community, so we can start having these very much needed conversations. I would like to take this slight opportunity to post the podcast that Dr. Andrews was speaking about earlier. It is entitled "The Hardest Working Man in Southeast Queens, Probably the City, Possibly the State." Give it a listen. You get to hear a lot more about Dr. Andrews' leadership story. We dive in a little bit into grad school days and doctorate days that the courses that you took on and the information that you learned and how it helped you. So if anyone's interested, please feel free to tap in there, listen in to that conversation. And additionally, we put the dates up before for our next conversation, our next town hall. Once again, invite someone. We'd love to have even more people hearing the good word and about what Dr. Andrews will be doing for the district. And lastly, that we would love for everyone to make sure you you go out and vote on June 28th. June 28th is the day. I think it's pretty much set now. There's going to be no changes. We are good to go with June 28th. And
can I mention one thing before you close?
Yeah, sure.
Let me just, because it's something I didn't mention, and we talked about housing, and so we talked about the New York City Housing Authority. And of course, we talked about the fact that, we have real issues with repairs in the city housing authority. But one of the things we didn't talk about is the same issue. You know, I know the NYCHA residents think that they're the only ones who have issues with that. But I've gone through Rochdale now, and I'm in my second round going through Rochdale talking to people. And voters there are complaining about repairs there at Rochdale. Repairs not done, repairs that are, you know, continuing to, repairs that are done continuously, the same repairs that are done over and over. I've gone to people's apartments, they've said, look at that wall. That wall has been repaired 2 and 3 times. They've come back and repaired it 2 and 3 times. Look at my kitchen. I mean, I know the management tries to do a great job there, but I think that we can assist residents in Rochdale Village in particular by getting them access to the Division of Housing and Community. DHCR is the agency that oversees developments like Rochdale. And Rochdale technically, as I mentioned, a lot of development. By getting DHCR more involved with Rochdale Village, which they are not right now. Residents tell me they can't get emails, they can't get phone calls, they can't get letters responded to. We've got to get DHCR back involved with Rochdale Village. How do we do that? We get the state elected official who will then be able to reach out to the Division of Housing Community and invite them into Rochdale for a meeting with the residents to talk about the concerns Rochdale residents have. I mean, I think one of the biggest issues repairs. I think that, of course, they can make sure that they come in and assist the management with those issues, like repairs. That's what they're there for. They're a state agency with enormous resources and funding. But again, they can also help with the co-ops in downtown Jamaica, which we have a number. There are people in that downtown Jamaica area that didn't even know what DHCR was. They've never heard of DHCR. They've never had an elected official, the assembly person, come into their buildings and talk to them about developing a relationship with the state agency that oversees developments like that. We've got to get DHCR involved in our community. Again, they're a state agency, the largest state agency, and they have enormous resources. And I happen to know a number of people there. The former commissioner is a very close friend of mine. And I know a number of people are still there as deputy commissioners. We got to get these guys involved with our developments. And I'll do that day one. We'll make sure that they have a meeting set up with residents in Rochdale Village, and we'll start working on all the other cooperative developments in the area to make sure that the Division of Housing and Community gets more involved with these developments so that they can hear what the residents have to say in terms of their concerns and begin to work towards helping the management of these companies address those concerns.
Indeed, indeed. Okay. I think that is all for this evening, for this conversation. I look forward to the next one on the 28th at 6 p.m. Youth and Education. We hope all of you will join us. Thank you for taking your time, being on time, and for showing up of the next conversation, May 21st, Saturday, May 21st at 6 p.m. Please join us. This is going to be a really good conversation. I look forward to that. It's right around the corner. Thank you all. Have a wonderful evening, and we look forward to seeing you at our next town hall.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jermaine.